All right. Well, welcome to the Tuesday night music show. This should normally be Mr. BSR, the Brian S. Red Machine, but he's unavailable tonight. He's off doing a site inspection for a gig. So you've got me, your ever thankful host. I, of course, Jay Brannon, DJJ from Swingin' Temecula, as Brian would say. I've got my great producer, lighting guru, Howie Darkstar, is with us this evening as always.
Hello.
Howie, how are you?
Yeah.
And we're tapping into a music savant from the greatest city on earth, Boston. DJ John C. is with us as well. John, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jay? Good to see you, Howie.
Doing great, doing great. I think the majority of people that I know that watch this show are mobile DJs, and a lot of them are doing weddings, but we do other events besides weddings. This year, it's, I've pretty much done 98% weddings with a couple of parties thrown in, retirement, a couple birthdays, a graduation, things like that. But interestingly enough, on the music scene, Brian and I were speaking. He's got an event coming up in a couple of weeks in Daytona Beach, Florida. And he contacted me directly about this because it's a little out of his wheelhouse, believe it or not. Brian is a music expert on a different level, but he's an expert in the things that he enjoys, but also in a lot of things that he may not even be a big fan of. But he's luckily dealing with a music genre that I find enjoyable, and that would be metal. So he has tapped me to give him some song ideas for a show. It's a 4-day festival called, I believe it's called Rockville. It's in Daytona Beach, Florida. And to give you an example of some of the headliners, Metallica is headlining 3 of the 4 nights. The night they're not headlining, it is Slipknot. Some of the backup bands on the headlining stages are Anthrax, Day to Remember, Asking Alexandria, a lot of, what I call kind of new metal, which is something in the last, let's say, 20 years, where the Breaking Benjamins, the 3 Days Grace, the Asking Alexandria, Day to Remember, things like that kind of came in, where it's obvious that they're heavy metal, but they're not of that 80s, 90s genre. Because I view metal as one of these, and there's a great guy named Sam, I'll get his name before the show ends, but his name is Sam. And if you've ever seen that metal show where Eddie Trunk and his 2 partners did a show on VH1 Classics for about 7 or 8 years, Sam did a bunch of documentaries. He's long-haired, wears like Cannibal Corpse t-shirts, but he's a documentary filmmaker, and he owns a company called Banger Films. And he did a great thing on heavy metal, but he broke it down into subgenres. Death metal, black metal, power metal, old metal, new metal, then new wave British heavy metal, all that stuff. So if you ever get a chance to see it, I believe it's called Metal the Evolution. It's really, really interesting. And it really expands upon how we look at genres of music as, Morbid Angel is heavy metal, but so is Metallica. But one of the 2 might call themselves black metal and one might call themselves hard rock. So I really wanted to not just talk about metal, even though I could, because I love this stuff, but talk about what's the approach when you end up with music that may not be your strong suit. Who do you reach out to? Is it a Facebook group? Is it another DJ in your area? Is it somebody that you know in your market? Is it somebody that you've met at a show? Let's start with John. You have an incredible music knowledge, but if you were to run into a genre for an event that you might not be totally like, yeah, I got this. What's your process to figure it out?
Growing up, there was always music in the house. We grew up in the 70s. There was always a variety show on television. You had Lawrence Welk on the weekends and Edie Gourmet and Steve Lawrence singing songs. So that stuff was always in front of me. There were always variety shows. We had Donnie and Marie. So I kind of locked in from the 70s on is kind of where I started to figure out the breakdown of genres. I bought some disco records and bought some pop records and, a few rock and roll records. My rock history probably started 75, 76. and then I had to go backwards. I was hearing stuff on the radio, seeing the new releases that were coming out, saving up your allowance money to go buy records at Strawberries for $4.99 for a full length LP. The good old days when music was good. So I've always had a handle on pop, on rock, and on oldies. I had older parents, so a lot of the records in the house. My father loved country, so there was always Hank Williams playing, Eddie Arnold, Jim Reeves. So I had the old school country. And he, mom liked big bands, the crooners. So Frank Sinatra, Engelbert Humperdinck. So that was around. So growing up through that, I think is easier than someone who was born 20 years ago that has to go back and research all this. So that may not be their strong suits. They're like, I've never heard of half of these people. I don't know any of this music. So coming forward, if you stay pretty current, in English speaking music, especially for me, there hasn't really been anything to come along that I haven't followed. I can deep dive into the hard rock. I can get in with the best of the rap. The only thing I can't do is speak fluent Spanish, so I don't know what they're saying in half of the Latin songs. So if that's the case, usually, Facebook forums, DJ groups, speaking to JC in Mexico, can you translate this? Is this clean? Can I play this? Is it appropriate?
Yeah.
That's probably the only thing I'd have to reach out for. I know it sounds good, but I don't know what the content is. And that's the risk you run. You don't know what they're saying,
Yeah. And I mean, my market, for example, I do a lot of weddings where I play a lot of Latin music. And, I always approach it from a mixing standpoint. So I love playing cumbias because cumbias tend to be very, within about a 10 BPM range, you can get about 55 million songs and you can find hooks. And I think people get surprised because they're like, we don't normally hear this mixed like that. Because I'm trying to mix it. The only thing I've learned from the audience is, yeah, we really want to hear the whole song. So it's okay if you mix the next song in at the end, but don't kind of jump it. So, even the markets had to teach me a few things in that respect. Howie, what about you? You've been in the game for a while. You've got an immense knowledge of music. And I have to say, before you even answer, if I had to go to somebody nearby me in respects to getting to them online, then I wanted more punk, early 70s kind of rock style. That Howie's the guy to talk to because Howie's got the punk scene on lockdown. Like, it's incredible. So what's your process?
As far as the punk goes, yes, I was doing lights and sound in New York, as most, at least the people, the followers of the show know. And I missed, a whole era of, that post-disco scene and the freestyle and so forth. So I've been getting that, from Brian and from you guys here in the chill room, because I was literally working 6 days a week. So there was no like, hey, I'm going to go check something out in a club somewhere. Because I was working in New York and lived in Jersey, and the commute, it was just very, very long days. So, just a few years back, I was like, I need to round out my musical knowledge. And, some of these things are being asked for. And a few years back, we did an 80s reunion party. And so I said, well, look, I'm not your guy for that sort of dance music, but Jimmy Spin, who is awesome with that stuff, as you know, he DJ'd and I did the production and the lighting. And so that worked well as a team for that. But I learned a lot that night. And then it was like, oh, hey, I'm digging this stuff. And so he turned me on to some of the music and I started buying them up. And then as a member of Promo Only, I'm able to buy those, what they call them DVDs, but they're MP4s now. And you can get a back catalog of older music, but it's a video. but it still plays in Serato. So, people are going, where can I get these? And they're with the illegal stuff, and you can get a good quality thing like I did. Every Christmas, I treat myself. I'll spend $150 to $300. If you buy 10 or more, they're $15 a piece. It comes out to 30.3 cents per song. You can't beat that, and some of them have, the intro edits. And so that's what I've been doing. And then I'm listening. I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool. And I practice on Lori and cause she loves to dance. So that's how I educated myself that way. And I'm getting better. I wouldn't put myself out there right now as a freestyle or 80s guy right now, but I'm getting there.
Yeah. I think it's a growth and development thing. And, I looked over while you were talking at my phone only because I was watching the news this morning in San Diego, and at 7:30 they had, a bumper track play, and it was a song called Millport by Greg Graffin. And I knew the voice, but it was very folky, Americana, acoustic-y.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, but I know this voice. This is a great song. And I hit Shazam, went to the album, listened to like a bunch of the tracks, and I'm like, man, this would sound great at the right event, but this voice is haunting me. Who is this? So I decided just to Google Greg Graffin. Greg Graffin is a Cornell PhD holder in evolutionary biology. You also know Greg Graffin as the lead singer of Bad Religion, and he has a very distinctive voice.
Mm-hmm.
So now, by hearing a literally 10-second piece of music, I'm going to get this because I'm going to have the punk groom bride audience where they're going to hear their favorite singer's voice doing a mellower, folky Americana track during dinner that's going to fit perfect, or during cocktail that's going to fit perfect. So, I've got a couple thousand Shazams. I'm constantly going through. When I did my 24-hour set a few weeks ago, I wanted to pick up some new house stuff, and I ended up buying like 3 or 4 what I call CDs from iTunes. Well, you're looking at 100 tracks for like $9. Like, I wanted more darkwave for this week. I spent $18 on iTunes, and I walked away with 169 songs. I mean, I now have a catalog of darkwave, a genre I didn't know 3 weeks ago. I stumbled upon a video on YouTube, and it said darkwave, cold wave, synth pop, textured goth industrial. And I'm like, okay, you had me at textured goth industrial. What's this? And
it's never going to fit on a divider
on the video
in the vinyls. It's going to be way
that's not going to be at Strawberries.
I never heard that term before until you brought it up. But in my mind's eye, I was thinking Bela Lugosi's Dead and
100%
stuff like that. And then when you did your marathon, I was starting to type in 9 Inch Nails when you were playing Bela Lugosi's Dead, and boom, before I even finished typing, you were into 9 Inch Nails, and I'm like, yep, this is what I envisioned to be. Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. With that, there's a lot of genres out there now that, and I think the house scene is probably the most misunderstood. And I believe it was DJ Times maybe 15, 18 years ago. On the cover of their magazine put dance music and the 100 genres. And inside, they literally had 100 terms for what we call dance music. EDM, house, progressive house, deep house, techno, tech, progressive, vocal house, piano house. Like, there's a great thing. I did a video years ago. There's a guy named Ishkur, Ishkur. And if you go to, I think it's just ishker.com, or if you Google Ishker, he has a tree of dance music. And I don't know if it's updated for the newer things, but it used to be where you could go to it and click on progressive house and it would drop down like 4 or 5 examples with audio. Because I would argue with people like, yeah, it's a great house track and it's progressive house. Like,
Ooh,
you know, it's like, this is a good oyster. Well, it's a Maryland oyster. Oh, it's not a Point, Bay oyster. No, it's, it's an oyster, but you got to be specific. Like,
But it's
but
only
I'm enjoying
specific if you go and look for the tracks, then you have to know what you're looking for, because house is a big category.
it's a huge category.
It's high trance, Goa.
Do you guys know where the term house music came from?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's the first place called the Warehouse in Chicago, and it got shortened to just saying house.
Well, and that was the reason. The reason it got shortened is it was because of the fans, and it was so popular that they were playing that music on a local station in Chicago, and it was the most popular station. So, hey, where are you going Saturday? I'm going to the house. So they're going to the house to listen to house music.
Yeah.
And then I get lost after that with all the subgenres. Like, is it a Blue Point oyster, or did it come from New England, or is it in Maryland? I mean, who cares?
It's an oyster. Yeah, it's a song.
If you dance to it, if you can vibe to it, it's good. That's
I did the Movement Festival, which is an annual festival in Detroit, Michigan, like downtown at, someone will correct me in the chat, but it's at a famous park, which is like downtown, right next to the Marriott, right on the river. I want to say it's like Haynes River Park. It's got this beautiful, huge sculpture in there, like that's mirrored. And it was kind of crazy because I thought it would be like an EDC crowd, and it was just a t-shirt and jeans crowd, but they were super, super into techno. And it was for even me, this is only 5 or 6 years ago, it was an eye-opener, some of the side act DJs that were playing, and I'm like, man, I'm embarrassed, but I would have called this a house track. And it's like, no. And you start to pick up what I call the identifying characteristics of what's the beat doing. Okay, that makes this techno and this not. I've played, somebody asked for a techno song one time and I played Strings of Life. They go, hey man, I really wanted a techno song. I'm like, this is considered one of the first techno songs ever done. Well, no, I wanted like eats. I'm like, and I found some Richie Houghton track or Carl Coxish track, and again, who I thought was a house DJ, but he's got some amazing techno tracks. I think the open-ended lesson of learning is a constant. We're fortunate to have the chill room, because I've certainly, meeting someone, as John mentioned, JC from Mexico City, who is another music savant. I've played stuff from the 80s that I think of it as it's obscure, and he gets it every time. And then when it comes to Latin music, that's obviously his wheelhouse, but he's kind of all over the map. Do you find there's a tendency to go to genres that you feel strongest in, even if you should expand out, John?
I think we do. It's a comfort zone. You don't push it too far outside, because you run the risk of playing something either you've not previewed or aren't familiar with. Like lo-fi is kind of like, wasn't really a big category, or this whisper ASMR type songs with a very, very minimalistic beat and very little going on, and people, I love this. It's like, yeah, that's dinner and cocktail. No one's going to get up and dance to that.
No,
it's party time. There's a space, there's a place for it. You can be experimental in those pockets, but when it's time to release the hounds, so to speak, then you want to know what you're playing and have control over your bangers, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lo-fi is one of those terms that came up a few years ago, and it was used as an example from a client of what they wanted for dinner. And when I first heard it, I'm like, lo-fi? Okay, why does this sound like it's going to be some ambient chill stuff? And that's exactly what it was. But I think it really enhances your level of professionalism when speaking to clients, when you can articulate what they want back to them. So if they say they want something that's kind of, we're thinking of something kind of mellowish, like, you're talking lo-fi. Oh my God, I love lo-fi. I used it in college to study. Like, and I don't know if you know this, but there's like probably 18 YouTube channels that do lo-fi 24/7. It's a constant live lo-fi channel. Because when I went to look for examples of lo-fi, I started getting hit with all these things, and I grabbed my kids about it. I'm like, do you know lo-fi? It's like study music. I'm like, is that what it's called? They're like, that's what we call it. Yeah, it's study music. Like, it's what you put on in your headphones when you're studying. Like, interesting.
I think it's interesting how a lot of these terms don't really come out until after the fact. Like yacht rock. Yacht rock was not coined until 2005. It was originally known as the West Coast Sound, and it was from 75 to mid 80s. But then they coined it as yacht rock in 2005. And same thing with this lo-fi. Like okay, what does that mean? Can that encompass music from various decades as long as it's study music?
That's a great point, because I will often use terms and I know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But in my world, it's okay for me to say, I'm looking at the screen as an example, Lords of Acid. Lords of Acid, when I first got into them in the 90s, were dance music.
Yeah.
And then I started hearing it at nightclubs played between other dance-ish music. And then someone said, oh, wax tracks. So if I say I'm doing a wax track set, you're going to hear Lords, even though they're not on wax tracks. Wax tracks is like Front 242 and My Life with Thrill Kill Cult and things like that.
Right.
Well, now it becomes, oh, so this is industrial. Well, Ministry to me was always industrial. Right. And I sort of thought of Nine Inch Nails as industrial. And I guess I see how you could call Lords of Acid industrial, but like, where does that leave us with like My Life with Thrill Kill? Like, they're not industrial.
It's harder to pigeonhole a band into one specific thing when it threads together so nicely. Like you say, coming in and out of Ministry and Misfits and sounds like that. You can get like work the punk scene in if you get the right drum beat. Now it's kind of on the housey edge, and then you can go back and swing it the other way to more industrial. So it all runs together. It's just
and it runs together well
too at the same time. It does,
because I played Lords of Acid for Lori Saturday night, and she was dancing to it and having a good time. And she said, "Oh, who is this?" I said, "Oh, it's the Lords of Acid." And she was like, "Oh, that's an odd name." She said, "This is a fun dance, track." So,
one of the greatest shows I ever went to in San Diego was Lords of Acid, headlined over My Life with Thrill Kill, Ministry, and Hansel and Gretel, and it was like the audience was just who you thought it was going to be. It was a lot of like latex. It was a lot of, the kind of fetishy kind of crowd, but it was a great, great crowd, and it's what I learned at my first EDC, that when you get a group of like-minded individuals together that love a form of music, they're very receptive and they're very open and they're very nice. I've been to my fair share. I saw Metallica. I take that back. I was supposed to see Metallica on their first US tour on Elektra with Armored Saint and Wasp. But when they got to Logan Airport, because it was the same time that Rick Allen had lost his arm in the car accident from Def Leppard, Peter Mensch, their manager, had not updated Lars's visa. So Lars got arrested in Boston at the airport, which meant that the other three members showed up at the channel, because that's where it was, John. And I got to stand and spend about 15 minutes talking to Cliff Burton at the bar, drinking beer. So it's one of those rare never think it's going to go anything. Like, what's the big deal? This dude's in the band moments that you look back on and go like, wow, that was kind of crazy.
You had Howie with you. You could have hopped on the kit and rifled through a couple of numbers for them to help.
Yeah, that's I've never maintained I can like do much more than like air drum. Like
time. 4-4, one down, one
that's
up.
all I got. That's all I got. Yeah, as long as they clap on the 2, I'm good.
Yeah.
As long as they understand the rules. But it's funny how I'm finding more and more and more with my clients, even for weddings, having deep discussions. I think I told you guys a couple weeks ago, my wedding, the bride and groom are 10 years apart. So 28 for the bride, 38 for the groom, and he's in a punk band. And I looked up his band, and the bride asked me to get one of their songs to play at the wedding. And they're what I would call very 90s punk. And by that I mean, Offspring meets Blink 182 meets Lit meets Jimmy World meets, it's that straight ahead, what you're getting kind of sound. So at their wedding, I opened the dancing with Happy by Pharrell into Taylor Swift, Shake It Off. And where I would normally go into Outkast, Hey Yeah, because it's a good mix, I went into Jimmy World in the middle, and the place erupted. So it was that communication of, what are you guys into? What do I need to know to make this a better event? I have a wedding this weekend, and they've given me like 4 songs and said, you know what to do. You got this. And I'm like, thank you.
That's a lot of space to fill in between 4 songs.
Do you think that the average client really knows the different genres? Because I've done events where they want 80s, 80s dance music, but they're really into heavy metal. And like you said, I could drop Jimmy Eats World in there, and they're just like, oh my God, that is so, and they just, it's like I'm mixing these 3 different genres. And they don't seem to really realize. Do you think they know what's what? Well, other than basic, this is metal and this is.
Well, we're DJs. We speak the language. We can oversell it sometimes and make it more complicated on them. Sometimes less is more, leading them into bands and artists versus descriptive categories of the music they want. It was an old sales thing, like in the car business. If someone comes in and they're interested in safety in the car, then you're going to tell them about airbags and door structure and safety tests. And, they don't care that the leather's plush or that it's got wheels or a moonroof. You focus on what's important to them. You sell what they want to hear. And the same, if someone's not interested in safety and you say, this car's got airbags all around, they're just, I don't care about any of that. I just want to know what the gas mileage is. So you got to know your client and know what they really want to hear. If you find out a little bit of their backstory, what kind of music they like, what they listen to when they grow up, you can kind of piece it together. You don't need to have.
Would you play Crash Test Dummies in the background while you're selling the car?
I did. One time I did make a compilation of all audio-based music. I don't know, in my automobile. Oh, I don't know if we have licensing for that, so I better not do that anymore.
Now, I get what you're saying. So basically, you're going to say, hey, would you like some oysters? You don't have to say, oh, these are Blue Point, or no, these came from New England. You want oysters or don't you?
Your folks are going to be there. Your folks are really big into Motown. Do they like Smokey? Do they like Marvin? Do they like the Supremes? Okay, I'll get a set. When did you graduate? Oh, I graduated in '87. Oh, what did we listen to? The hair band stuff or the dance? Oh, we like kind of the hair rock and roll. Okay, so some Def Leppard, some Bon Jovi.
Sure,
we can piece it together. We can. Right. We'll make the pot. Rather than drawing it out of them. Stressing them out that they're trying to remember a song or a name or something.
But I think there's always that excitement, and it's kind of part of when, and obviously COVID has changed so much of our industry. I have not physically driven. I've met with one client in 2021 at a Starbucks. One. Versus 2019 and back, I met with probably 85% of my clients at a Starbucks, at a bar, at a restaurant, at something.
Yeah.
And now my clients in a couple weeks, it's like, hey, let's, get together this week and try to finalize things. and they're local. They're like, great, you want to do a call or a Zoom? I'm like, whichever one you're more comfortable with. So there is that change, and the dynamic is different. And I've had to kind of come to grips with, like, I don't feel like face to face is different than Zoom. This isn't face to face. This is Zoom. You know, I've got 20 things going on maybe that you don't know about, versus face to face. There's a focus. And I love when you talk to a client and they mention something like John said about, I got out in 87. It's like, oh, you know, are you the here we go again girl, or are you oh my God, I love White Snake, but we can't play that at the wedding, can we? I'm like, as a matter of fact, we can, and here's how we can represent you. It's one of my tried and true rules of doing a wedding or an event. Always attempt to have your clients well represented, because, and I've seen this in practice, if you get a bride and groom who love big hair from the 80s, and you do a dinner set that's the mellower side or the acoustic side or whatever side, and they're constantly smiling, and you're getting a thumbs up from the groom, and you're getting a wave from the bride, and you're getting that rave heart and the thank yous, the group will interpret that as you're not only good friends with them, but that you're only there to make them happy. And the only reason you go to an event, especially a wedding, is for the people that invited you. Nobody's ever gone to a wedding and said, man, I'm so stoked to be here and just eat and drink and dance. Yeah, but it's because of this couple. Yes, but this is what I want to do on the side. But it always comes down to, if the couple's not happy, if they don't look engaged, you know, I think you tend to lose it. One of the first weddings I did at a venue that I've worked a lot this year, thankfully, the bride and groom had met over music. I think they met at Coachella.
Wow.
So they were so into it that they made each table's name an artist, a DJ, or a festival that they'd attended. So my dinner music went from Dave Matthews to Old Crow Medicine Show to Dead Mouse. Like, it was all over the map because they'd been to all these different shows. And famously, again, as you know, you've both certainly said, knowing what's going on in the background is sometimes important. They came out on the dance floor, and I have this Scooter remix of Shipping Off to Boston, where you hear kind of Red Foo's voice in the beginning say, if you love Boston, put your hands in the air. Well, the cherry on the sundae at this particular wedding, where the music for everything was going great, was after the special parents dances, I decided to drop that. And come to find out earlier in the night, they're from Boston. So needless to say, the entire event went ballistic on one track. Then I went back into my slower, 100 BPM dance stuff, Get Low and Usher, yeah, and all that. And I'll never forget mixing from Whitney Houston, Dance with Somebody, sped up a little, into Fisher, Losing It. And that's exactly what they did. They just went bonkers over it. I was like, yes. And it was the right age group. So I hit them with the Eric Prydz, Calling Me, and Better Off Alone, and The Launch, and Sandstorm, and 9 p.m. Till I Come, and that stuff. And they just ate it up. And it's those nights you walk away just shaking your head like, this is the joy that I get every time. But it's talking to other DJs, and I don't.
I know you're not afraid to put the work in either. If you're getting hit with the genre, you're a little unfamiliar, because I know we talk in here in the late night showroom about all kinds of different types of music. And if someone said they wanted to do 4 straight hours of house, I could do it, but I'd do some homework. And I know you're not afraid to do the same thing if you got to dig in and figure out what was good and understand.
I don't think you can be as knowledgeable. Every time I watch these shows, my wife will have me watch some home show or some cooking show or something. And the way you can tell that the guy's an expert or the woman's an expert is because of the way they discuss things as they move forward. If it's cooking a fish, they don't just say, I put the fish in the pan, I put some butter and oil, and I cook it. They say, this is sea bass. You got to be really careful not to burn this. If you're doing cod, you do it this way, or swordfish, or if you're doing salmon, you can always do this with the skin. That's how I know they're an expert, because they're showing me their knowledge base as they go over it. And I've personally found that a lot of great compliments I'll get during, before, and after come down to being like you and a lot of other DJs who are willing to put themselves out there as experts on music, because that's what we are. You know, we deal, it's not just repetitively playing the same songs. It's the old line I got from a DJ years ago about, you've been a DJ for 20 years doing weddings, but have you only done one wedding for 20 years?
Right.
Like, are you just doing the same wedding week after week after week? And I'm like, no, that's why I'm happy to post a gig log, because the tracks are different, because the people are different. You know, there's, I mean, I'm going to guess we have access to what, 30 million, 50 million songs that are out there today. And everybody on the planet can listen to any of them at any moment. It's certainly changed. You know, John, you started back in the day. Howie, you're back from the old school as I am.
I don't.
You had to dictate the event much more in the 80s and 90s. Even when I started in the mid 90s, coming from 80s bands, you dictated the way the music went because you didn't have it.
Well,
you had what you had.
Yeah, and guys like us that are true music lovers, you know, when I first started out, I was not very good, but I had more music than anybody else. You know, I had the music, and they were like, oh, he's got the tunes, you know.
We had to build sets too. It wasn't random. Like you knew you bought that new Into the Groove Madonna record, like right in the middle of the party, this has to land. So I got to find a way to get there and then take it from there, because this is the big one. This is the one we just bought. This is going to show that we have stuff that's current. So you work your way up through the oldies and get into hit that spot that would break loose the dance floor, and then you'd work with whatever you have. I used to love 45s because you just had such variety. I still got probably 400 of them. It's like someone comes up once, you know, onto the boardwalk. Yeah, I got that. You bought like all that old RCA collection, right? And you have all like the Rock Around the Clocks and all those.
I got that on 45. Yeah. You know, you bring up a really valid point, John, that I think is on topic, but a little bit twist. How are you now at your events as far as what's your thoughts on new music? Like, as far as like, you know, you and I and Howie and most people that are going to see this, we went out and got new music. I remember going back not that long ago, because I personally find at weddings tend to be anywhere between a few months to 6 months to a year behind. Like, you don't have to play the new hit by Dua Lipa. Today you might, because the access is so much faster. But a year or two or three ago, you were kind of playing what people knew. And that's what I maintain. If you want people to dance, play what they know. Unless you're in a nightclub where they came to hear disco, then you can play anything by disco. But if you're at an event that's a standard wedding mobile event, they need to know. They do want to hear Earth, Wind and Fire September, and they do want to hear Usher, and they know these songs. Yeah. But it's pretty
20 that are, you know, consistently are going to work their way in somehow to everything. But you have to look at what's in front of you and say, who's here? Who am I playing to? You know, we're not just doing a cookie cutter. This is the order I play it. This is my set list. It's the same at every gig.
Right.
And we're not afraid to change it on the fly, because collectively we know a ton about music, and we can see if we're a little too much energy and people are starting to fall off. Like, all right, let's take it down about 15 BPM and smooth them out a little bit. You know, we can pull the strings and
do you find that you go right? Do you find that you go to more older or newer? Like, I find I go to more older than newer. I find people come up to me and request songs that are not, this just came out, can I hear it? I find they come up to me and go like, oh, do you have Jimmy Eat World, the middle? Like, it's almost like the event becomes almost more throwback. So I've kind of given up on trying. Like, I'll go out, you know, and as Howie mentioned, Promo Only Pool is great for this. I'll get their new audio release, their express audio for that week, that month. I'll get their mainstream radio. So I know I've got the new stuff going forward, but I find that I'm not relying on that quite as much as I'm relying on going back 10, 15, 20 years, that people suddenly, because I think it's the memory of music that people have associated with the event and the couple.
Right.
So I'm curious.
A new song isn't going to have any memories attached to it yet because it's
exactly 100%.
And if you get something this month from promo only, chances are that's not going to hit the radio for 3 more months before anybody knows about it. You know, you got to just put it on the shelf for a while and let it marinate till it's like that Dua Lipa thing. I had that almost 6 months before, and now it's twice an hour on the radio. You know, you just had, you can hear it. You say, "Oh, I know this is going to be big when this takes off. We're going to get so sick of hearing this one."
I think the only 2 tracks that I can look to, maybe 3, are from 2 artists where literally the week they came out, DJs were on Facebook like, "I'm playing this Saturday. I don't care. This is a banger." And it was Uptown Funk with Mark Ronson. And the same thing happened with the Trolls movie with Justin Timberlake. Can't Fight the Feeling. And it was like literally that weekend dropping them, and people were like, whoa. And I've got a great video from 2014, and I had a young couple who was really into dance music, and the week of their wedding, these are the 3 tracks that they really wanted to hear. They wanted to hear Blurred Lines, which came out that Tuesday. They got married on Saturday. They wanted to hear Akon and David Guetta, Work Hard, which is the Alice DJ Better Off Alone hook. And I think the other one that dropped that week was the Daft Punk with Nile Rodgers, Get Lucky.
Get Lucky.
And I remember thinking, oh, I'll play them, but understand no one's going to know them. And
all 3 songs with samples from about 15 years prior. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, but see, and that's kind of my point. This is what's so funny to me is like what's old is new again. You know, I pointed out one night in the chat room about Yolanda Be Cool with Dance and Chant. And when I first heard it, I was like, oh, I love this song. And I got it probably 2 or 3 years ago in December. I'm like, I love this song. I love this beat. This is so disco. I can play this here. I can play this here. This is going to be in my repertoire. And then I decided to go to YouTube and type in Dance and Chant, just out of curiosity. And there it was from 1979, the original, which just has less production, less bass. You know, it's the same song. All they did was re-release a song. I mean, you know, guys, come on. Put in a little work.
There's a small pocket for me as well where, there's a lot of throwbacks, 20 years ago or whatever. But then there's that maybe 4 to 5 years old songs, because maybe that's when they first started dating and that's their memory. One of the songs I can think of that was, requested quite a bit was Best Friend by Sophie Tucker, and that's 2017, which is relatively new, but that's what they remember as maybe their song, when they were dating, and now they're getting married.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen. And I love that John asked the same question I do. When did you graduate high school? If you went to college, when did you graduate college? Where did you go? Oh, I stayed out here and I got out 10 years ago.
When did you guys meet?
Yeah. And is there specific, because if they don't, I get this too, as I'm sure you both do. What are you guys into? We're really into everything. I'm like, okay, did you meet at a show? Like, is there a backstory to your relationship? Did you meet at a Dave Matthews concert? Have you gone to every, where I live is about an hour and a half from a place called Coachella in Indio, California, out in the Indio Valley. And Coachella famously is a music festival. Well, probably, 8-9 years ago, they started Stagecoach. And Stagecoach is the country version of Coachella. Stagecoach has now, it was supposed to happen in October. Now we're in November, but it got bumped now to April, I think. So, it's one of those things where you can determine a lot by people as to where did you hang out? I mean, I remember 20 years ago saying, did you guys ever go out dancing? Where do you go? What club in San Diego? And then the next question was, what do you listen to in the car? What radio station? Oh, I love 93.3. And now it's even better, because now they'll say to you, you know, I have Sirius XM and I listen to this channel. Okay, perfect. I have Pandora and I have this playlist. I use Spotify and I do this. And as a side note, a couple Florida DJ friends of mine, I was asking them where they get their clients' music from. And they both said about 95% of their clients send them their Spotify lists. Yeah. And I've probably had 2 clients this year send me their Spotify lists. And I had everything. But for me personally, I can't trust the internet. And I don't need you seeing an iPad with a cable.
No, it would be a point of reference is what I use.
For what? Yeah.
Yeah, point of reference.
And their Spotify list too is what
do
they
I
listen
have
to all
this?
the time.
Yep.
You don't play something they're going to hear every single day. Like, oh, when I work out, I always listen to these 6 songs. Like, aren't you sick of them yet? Don't you want to hear something like that, but not that one? You know, so let us be artists. Let us paint the picture and take what you give us. Play something unique based on what you gave us. Well, what we filtered through. Before
we you close this thing, I just want you to know I feel a little bit outnumbered here. You know, 2 Boston guys, but New York City, greatest city in the world, by the way.
I wouldn't argue that.
Represented here. I just busted on you guys.
I wouldn't argue that. I think New York City is one of the greatest places ever.
Boston Gardens. Boston Gardens.
That's the brick my parents gave me from the Boston Garden when they tore the joint down.
Gardens. Yeah.
And someday, if I ever have the honor and dream come true of actually playing at the Boston Garden, I don't care what they're calling it, I will come out and thank the Boston Garden. Because that's the venue that it was. The first time I saw Peter Frampton and Climax Blues Band, June 15th, 1979. The first time, my first real concert, the air had a certain scent in it I can't place. And I saw for the very first time a young lady 2 seats down in my row on the floor, because my dad got good tickets to Don Locke concerts, their local promoter. My dad knew. That's why I couldn't go to the Black Sabbath show, because Don Law said, "Oh, you don't want your kid at that show." But two seats down, a rather attractive young brunette girl who could have been from Braintree or Reading or Stoneham decided halfway through the show to stand on her seat and go like this. And I was...
Oh, she was lifting weights, you mean? Yeah, okay.
I guess the bottom of her shirt was very heavy.
Jeez, that didn't happen at the Johnny and Marie show I went to.
I spent the next about week speechless, staring off into space into what would only be considered a small coma. I literally left there that night going like, this is what being an adult is going to be like. Again, you kids watching this was 79. Things were different. The internet wasn't quite what it is today. Back then we called it the library.
Yes.
Yeah, no, what I love about this show and love about talking to you two and other DJs in my life is I never go a day without something where there's something new on it. There's some new track. It's a Shazam song. It's a YouTube song. It's an iTunes suggestion. It's a Apple Music suggestion. And now I've got XM Satellite. I mean, I'm trying, and I did this with Michelle last week. Every Sunday now, I just go through and like scroll this way and then hit play. And we ended up on the folk bluegrass. Sunday is more banjo Sunday. And like every song had a real similar sound to it, but every song was great.
Well, they only have 4 strings, so
you know what? It was either banjo with a mandolin and this, but again, my brain always goes to, I'm eventually going to get this person. One of the great parts of travel, even seeing you guys in Atlantic City, you get somebody from New Jersey, and it's like, oh, I was just out in Atlantic City. Oh my God, I love being down the shore in the summer. Oh, where are your guests from? Oh, they're mostly from, back east. Oh, let's blow the roof off the place for dancing. Oh my God, they're going to love that. Because you have an understanding of, the music. And to wrap the show up, it's not about learning in the way of a book, but it's about knowing your customer and your consumer and your client and your friends and associates better to know what's going to work the next time. Because you can't, as John said, cookie cutter this. This isn't,
No.
Here's what I play every single wedding.
Right.
There's a level of excitement for a DJ. When you get, like the other night, when I get to drop Jimmy World after Taylor Swift and watch a crowd lose their minds, that's a great feeling. And it's talking to people and learning. So don't ever think this is a dead end job of I know what I know and I'm done. It's an evolution job. You're constantly
learning. I mean, you have to evolve. Music changes. We keep learning. We keep trying to get better. So we don't want the new DJs out there to be discouraged that it's too hard and there's too much to learn. Because even us guys that got a lot of years collectively between us are still learning new stuff every day. And we're just learning how to apply it and make it work for our shows.
Yeah, and ask questions. Go to YouTube. I can't tell you how many times YouTube's your friend for music. It really is. But ask me, ask Howie, ask John. Come in the chill room. Look at the Disc Jockey News Network and realize the whole point of John Young's network is for us to help people in our industry do their job, make their money, and be better tomorrow than they were today. And that's all. So I greatly appreciate everyone coming in. John C., our special guest this evening. I, as always, love you, sir. Appreciate you coming in. I haven't had enough. This is water, of course. I haven't had enough water yet to take a bullet for you, but I'm probably about 4 away. Howie, a master. And I'm telling you now, you're going to see my video coming up soon. If you need help figuring out DMX lighting and you're serious, not I have a question, but I need a master, a Zen master to teach me in a professional environment, because if you're not paying for it, it's never worth it. Remember that. There's 2 things to remember. If you're not paying for it, it's never going to be worth it. And you always pay for talent and not time. So that's another show altogether. But yeah, look up Howie Darkstar as far as lighting is concerned.
Thank you.
Zen Master. Brian, we'll see you next week. I will be in Vegas, but I will join you guys. I will be at Wedding MBA. So if you're friends with me on Facebook, Instagram, hit me up if you're going to be at Wedding MBA next week. I will be in Las Vegas. And I might even have a guest come in on our Tuesday night show.
I think I might know who he is.
Rhymes with Rocks. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I hope so.
To John Young and everyone back there in the cold tundra of Disc Jockey News Network, and to all of you, we greatly love and appreciate your patronage. Thank you. Stay well. Peace. And we will see you next time.